Let people in. We're going to go live. And hey, we are live on Facebook. Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Mike, one of your co-hosts for the Saturday Morning Multifamily Unplugged. I am joined today by my co-host, Moose. Hey, look up, buddy. Say hi.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, we're live this morning on Facebook and Zoom. We are joined by our guests, Mercy and Hendra Tambunan from the Bay Area out in California. We are excited today to talk about multifamily. We're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into some strategies and systems and different models, right? We were talking before the show a little bit about a couple of different models. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And just some housekeeping stuff. Hey, everybody, please do us a favor. Please go out to social media, whether it be Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you hang out, and hang out with us. Join us, like us, love us, subscribe to us, YouTube, watch my YouTube channel and video. But we are really glad you are here today, whether you're on Facebook or whether you're on Zoom. And go wake somebody up, right? Go get somebody, put a cup of coffee in their hand, let them know what's going on and that we're here and we're live. So we're ready to kick this thing off. Carl, I am, and just so everybody knows, I'm only on for about 15 or 20 minutes this morning. I have to go. I'm going to be speaking at the University of Minnesota for an ethics class. So, Carl, I'm going to turn this thing over to you and let you run with this morning. So,
yeah, well, thanks, Mike. And you've done, obviously last year you've done a great job, carrying the weight. So I don't mind picking up the ball today. So I know you've got something going on and you're going to be with us for a short time. But for everybody that's listening, we've got a couple of guests here that we were talking with earlier. That are out in California. And I was saying how I used to live in California and how that market out there is really hot. And one thing I want to say just before I bring them on to have them tell us their story and how they got into real estate and where they are today. Someone told me a long time ago, real estate is a local business. In other words, wherever you are, wherever you're listening from, whether it's Rochester, New York, or right now I'm in Ohio or California or Florida, pay attention to what's going on in your local market if that's where you want to invest, or if you're going to step out, like many of our guests have, out of their local geographic area, learn as much as you can about the area that you're investing in, because real estate is a local business. And even in the city of Chicago, if you're doing deals in Lincoln Park versus Washington Park, it makes a difference. So with that said, I want to welcome you guys and give us give us kind of the story about how you got involved in real estate and where you're at today and what's going on.
Yeah, so thank you for having us, though, Mike and Carl. So our journey, though, it's actually started from myself first, because I was reading Rich Dad Poor Dad like everybody else, and then get into passive income mode, right? Start looking into real estate as the rental properties, and then we are able to scale up about to 8 to 10 properties since then. But looking back about 3 years ago, I would say that we started that feeling that it's not scalable fast enough, because originally the passive income is nice, but we want to use it as our son college fund. Nobody realized that Mercy and I came to the United States as a foreign student. So we enjoy the luxury of going to school without having the burden of student loans. And we want our son to experience the same thing. And when we shifted that passive income to college fund, it's not scalable fast enough. I was a traveling consultant. Mercy was operating a restaurant on a weekend, and we got sick and tired of our quality time too. And we started looking into business, and we just realized, like, you know what? Everywhere we go, buying business or doing side hustle, it's always going back to real estate. And then one thing that come to mind was just like, hey, if we got one single family home, maybe we can go to multifamily. And that's how we dabble into multifamily like everybody else. But the moment we look into it, we just realized this is a business. And then that's where I asked Mercy, like, unless you're joining in with me together, I don't want to jump into multifamily, because we need to treat it like a business, a real business. Mercy was looking for a business too. And then we feel like this is a good tools that we can jump into and grow from there. And that's how we get started about 2 years ago.
Yeah, Mike, why don't you jump in, because I know we only have you for a couple of minutes. So I've got a couple of things we could talk about after you exit. But if there's anything you want to ask them.
Yeah. So I want to make a couple of comments. So first, I just want to welcome everybody that's here this morning. There's a couple people out on Facebook Live, and Angel and Trevor who are here on Zoom with us this morning. And I just always think that this Saturday thing is a great event, right? Because we bring some talent from different areas of the United States, from different areas of the multifamily industry, their experience level, their knowledge, and their background, right? And so these guys were already telling a story about their background, how they came here and what they were doing, and all of a sudden fell in love with multifamily. And I think that anybody you see in the multifamily space is who's really involved in it, loves the business. And I talk a lot about don't fall in love with the deal, but fall in love with the business, right? Because the business is what's exciting. I'm on Clubhouse in the morning in a room that there was a woman on a couple of weeks ago, and there was some conversation going back and forth. And this is not a real estate room. It's a room on leadership. It's a room on entrepreneurs. And she said, you know what I like about the multifamily industry is that people in the multifamily industry always want to learn. They're continually trying to educate themselves. And here's what I found out about the industry is that there's so much to learn, right? You guys, Mercy, Hendra, you guys know things that I don't know. And I've been in the business a long time, right? I've owned thousands of units and managed thousands of units, but I learned from you. I learned from other people that have been in the business years or haven't been in the business that long, because there's always new ways. It's innovation. It's like I just hired an assistant this week or last week, and she said to me, how come you picked me? I said, because you're younger than me, and you know things people are looking for that I don't know, and I want that perspective in my business. I want somebody coming to my business, helping my business grow because of a different perspective, right? So, and then the only other comment that I want to make is before the show, we were kind of talking about models, right? And I think there's different models in that multifamily space. So what I'm looking at today is two buckets. First of all, I think there is a heck of a lot of competition in the 150 unit and greater space. And if you're at 300, 350 units, the competition's off the charts right now. You're in offers, you're 15, 20 deep are going back for second, best and finals. It's crazy. How do you compete in that space? So I'm working right now in a little bit different space. So I like 2 to 20 units as one bucket, right? And right around that 20 unit. So we just put an offer in on a 22 unit and a 28 unit deal. But what the model around that is we're going to buy it. We're going to put a ton of CapEx into it. We're going to re-engineer it and put it back on the market. We're in and out in 20 to 30 months. That's the goal, right? So it's the small multifamily flip. I believe there's a lot of opportunity out there. There's a lot of products that were built in the 70s that you can go buy, that C-class stuff that's in a decent market, that's in a decent sub-market, and you can re-engineer it. The other bucket is above that. So below 100 units, 20 to 100 units in that space, not a lot of competition. Here again, you're just going in, you're dressing it up a little bit, and you're holding it a little bit longer as your hold time, right? So I think for the people that might be out there trying to compete in the 150, 300 unit space, I find it a little bit more difficult. Now, 600, 700 unit, there's a whole nother, so it's that pocket in between, right? So where do you want to spend your time? And then the whole other thing is underwriting. So why don't you guys just comment on all I just said, because I said a lot, and for you guys to unpack that is probably crazy, but go ahead.
No, I think what you said is so true, Mike. I mean, because you have to treat it like a business in any way, just like buying a multifamily is not just the same like buying a single family, right? Because you kind of understand the rent, you got a mortgage, and then whatever the spread is a cash flow. But when you look into multifamily, it's totally different ballgame. It really depends on who's your customer. Because as you know, there could be a lifestyle renter, it could be a workforce housing renter, it also could be a student housing or senior living, right? Depending on what is your target market and your business plan, that's how you reposition your acquisition. You understand the exit strategy going to be. And to comment about your size, you're right. I mean, actually, we've started seeing that 80 plus units has become in a more competitive market these days. People are have a bidding war, even in 80 to 100 space now. So our focus has been smaller than 80 units because that's going to be like a sweet spot over there. But it really depends on your local market or market that you are focusing on, and then knowing what your exit strategy, and then you marry them all together and make it, profitable, and then make sense from your acquisition perspective.
Yeah, Mike, you got about 4 minutes, so I'm just leaving the mic open for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I think you're right. And there is that space in there that just makes a lot of sense today, right? Because the economics are there, and I think that it goes back to that. So, and part of the process, I think you have to look at the early evaluation stuff, right? So before you ever spend the calories on doing the underwriting or really walking the property or anything, just from a 10,000 foot view, you have to know what's the population growth, what's the job growth, what's the household income. Listen, if I want to raise my rents $200 or $300, $400, $500, depending on the market I'm in, and that's the other point that I didn't make on that smaller stuff around 20 units. I'm looking at high rent growth markets, right? So if you look at rent growth right now, it's about 3.9% nationally. But then you got to drill down in the submarket, right? So Florida's at 7%. Sarasota's at 7% rent growth, okay? Tampa's at about 6.3, but the submarkets are different. So I just underwrote a deal in Tampa that we underwrote it at 4.9% rent growth, still above the national average, below what Florida's offering, and the numbers were off the chart. So, it goes back to the economics. So can I push my rents now? So if my rent is at $900, can I take it to $1,200? Well, first of all, does the household income in the area warrant it? Are the schools going to be good enough to bring that tenant base in order to put their kids in that school? And in a market like Florida, the schools are bad everywhere anyhow. What about can I re-tenant it enough? So these are all questions you have to ask yourself as an
Absolutely.
when you're going in. Anybody can go buy a multifamily deal, but it's what are you going to do with it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And here's where I think the creativeness comes in, right? We have to be creative. You know what, Carl, you got me talking way too much today. So this is about Mercy and Hendra, not about my beliefs. My beliefs you can get off my podcast. So hey.
No, but we're shoving an hour into 15 minutes, Mike. That's why.
Yeah, I know, right? Hey, listen, I just want to thank you guys for being here today. And I know that you guys are going to have a great show. I'm going to bow out and just kind of let you guys unpack all that stuff I said this morning. And hey, happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you, Mike. Same to you.
We will certainly, let's connect, and catch up. All right.
For sure.
Yeah, and Mike, call me later this afternoon. I'm interested in how your talk in the University of Minnesota goes.
Yes, I will.
So
hey,
anyway,
happy Father's Day, Moose.
Yep, same to you, guy.
Bye.
So I think a lot we've all brought up a couple good points, right? Really understanding one of the things I love about commercial real estate. I've always been a commercial real estate guy, right? The only residential thing I've ever bought was for my own use. It's never for investment per se, right? And so the thing I love about commercial real estate, and obviously, for those listening, multifamily, technically anything over a 4 flat is considered commercial real estate from a banking perspective, from a real estate perspective. But this conversation can also go to, if you're buying a 2 or a 3 or a 4 flat as well. like Mike said, there's always new things to learn. You know, I joke around with Mike. Mike did far more deals than I did and owned, you know, several times as many units as I ever did in my life, right? And I tell him, you forgot more than a lot of people have ever learned. And still to hear him say, with all the experience that he's had, that he's still learning, just proves to me that this commercial real estate and multifamily, there's always new things, right? There's new ways to finance it. There's new ways to reposition the property. There's new ways to attract tenants, right? There's new technology that comes in that we can put into our property to make it more attractive, to drive more traffic or to justify more rent. So, you know, I think that's a really great, you know, perspective that you have, that you're, you know, that you have an open mind, right? What's the old saying? A mind is like a parachute. You know, they both work best when they're open. You know what I mean? And so, you know, I'm just curious about, you know, from an education standpoint, you know, where besides the School of Hard Knocks, which we've all learned our lessons, where else have you gotten, you know, some real inspiration or some real good coaching, for lack of a better term, or training, you know, on a more a formal level? Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Wanna bring it up?
No, go ahead first, and I'll.
All right. Okay. So for us, it's obviously, before jumping into multifamily, you gotta invest in yourself in education, because that's going to be a foundational, right? And that's the first thing foremost. Whether you're going to be investing in coaching program, educational program, whatever it might be, but you need to lay out a foundation, because a lot of people, it's a pretty silly statement. Sometimes people like, I want to invest in real estate. And we ask them, like, have you invested in your education? No, I want to learn from you guys by invest. Well, obviously you need to be educated first. So that's the first and foremost. And secondly, invest in networking with people. By far, people are in multifamily are the most go-giving people that I've seen.
Yeah.
They are willing to work together, because this is definitely a team sport. A lot of people say, I want to take down a larger property. It's always a team sport. Here's the part that a lot of people don't realize, that this is the segment of real estate when I might be competing with you, but at the end of the day, if you and I win, we can still be collaborate in taking it down in one way. I coined the term competition, because you might be competing, but the other way you can be also collaborating. And this is the space that I've seen that in multifamily and commercial, that where we actually can be competing and then collaborating eventually too, or for this deal or eventually for the next deals. So that's a lot of wealth of knowledge is available out there from people experience. You touch about acquisition and then the way to finance it. You know, I know that people that taking 8 units in Sacramento, given their rent control, they're able to put it in a way that's a cash flowing in a massive way by turning into like a short-term rental. There are people also that I just recently spoke, that people that bought 8 units, from the number wise, it doesn't make any sense, but because the way they structure it, financing side, they are able to separate it into 2 4-plex and taking it, you know, from the traditional residential financing, and it's cash flowing great too. So how do you learn that? Just speaking with people, and that's how they get it out. And then we just embed it and then see it becoming a tool in our utility belt, and see if it's making sense for the next acquisition.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I want to make a couple of comments, but I also want to hear from Hendra, you know, what you're, you know, because it sounds like you came into the business after, right? You followed the lead, right? Is that correct? Or
correct? Yeah.
So also,
Mercy, I want to hear also how you transitioned into the business. You know, how you, because it sounds like Hendra was in the business first, and then you got into the business afterwards. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed. Well, you know, something that a lot of people forgot, you know, they are joining a course or a community, right? And then they've been, they have a coach, but they are not fully utilize the coach. Well, you know, this is completely a brand new business for me. Even I don't know what is the NOI in the 2 years ago. But I learned something that, you know, utilize the coaches and the community that you're in fully, meaning I have this underwriting, and every single underwriting, I will calling my coach because, I don't want to make a mistake, right? That's how you learn. Why we reinvent the wheel. So that's number one, fully utilize your coach that you already pay for it. Number two, let's say we are joining as an LP as well, limited partners, and I will be utilizing my operator. I'm going to ask them, where is this coming from? How do you get this number? Just highlight. So in every single things that giving to us as a LP, as a GP, asking the operator. Now that we are in the asset managing mode, I will be asking my property manager, how do you get the number? How do you come up with this and everything? That's how we learn. And the second thing is really huge is keep networking. Now we have this Zoom call, and then we can, connected with people coast to coast. Utilize that, not coast to coast, the whole world. So that's how we learn. Hey, what's going on in the East Coast? What's going on in? I've been connecting with this lady. She's in Germany, and she wants to come back to United States because she's in the military. So we kind of talking, and hey, let's take down in Kansas area how we can do that. That's how we learn.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the other thing I like about commercial real estate is there's so many different sub-markets, right? Commercial, you've got office, you've got retail, you've got big box, you've got self-storage, you have, senior living, right? And then even within multifamily. And I have to agree with you, if you're trying to, years ago, I tried to get into the boutique hotel business. Yeah. And I made an attempt at getting into the self-storage business, right? Well, those two communities are very tight. Everybody knows everybody. And if you're an outsider, it's very hard to get in there, right? And they were not very cooperative because they were protecting, there's just a limited source, So, but in the multifamily, I totally agree with you. I mean, there's so many different groups out there. There's so much. And for those of you that don't have a whole lot of money, in other words, if you're not sitting around and you don't have $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000, to pay a coach or to join a program, there's a lot of free information out there. Start educating yourself. Whatever budget you are, start. Bob Proctor, who's a mentor of mine, says, start wherever you are with whatever you have. Right? Don't wait for a year because a year goes by, you might miss the boat. Right? Start wherever you are with whatever you have. Right? And so, if you want to get into this business, start with yourself, right? Join those meetup groups, right? Get on some Zoom calls. Go to Mike Morawski, go to his YouTube, listen to his podcast every week. Dan Barrero, Gold Nuggets out of New York. He's a good friend of mine. Every week, he does a free training on Wednesday. There's so much free information out there. And then when you get into a position, because remember, what's the old saying, right? You get what you pay for. So, if you're only doing free stuff, you're only going to get a certain level, right? I mean, at some point you have to step up and take some of that money, and you're better off taking a year and investing $5,000 or $10,000 in yourself in some serious coaching, as opposed to blowing it on your first deal. Because I know, and I'm sure you guys have the same experience. I mean, if I had a guy like Mike holding my hand, you're right, helping me, like you said, Mercy, with the underwriting, on the first 5 deals alone, I probably would have saved $100,000 or $150,000, right? If I would have paid him $5,000, that would have been a great return on my investment, right? But I didn't. I did it all on my own, right? So I actually lost money instead of investing money in myself and taking an extra 6 months or whatever. And so no matter where you are, start, right? Really understand what market you want to get into. Find somebody that's doing what you're doing, right? So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Anthony Robbins talks about this all the time. You don't want to copy somebody, you mirror them. Right? You mirror them. Find somebody that's doing what you're doing and mirror them. Connect with them. Bring some value to them. Right? If you can't pay them, say, listen, I want to find deals for you. Right? You and I both know, a bird dog is worth their weight in gold. If someone brings you a deal, is that valuable to you? You better believe it. So if you don't have anything else to bring to the table, offer them that. Say, listen, I'll be a bird dog for you, or I'll do whatever. And that, like you said, Marcy, is a way that you learn. Right? You learn from the people that you're working with. So I think that's some really great advice for you guys. Now, let's get back to you personally. What was the first property you bought? I mean, tell us a little bit about that.
Dallin is actually our first one was 348 units
That's an
in
interesting one.
Dallas. That was an interesting one because again, coming in from networking in the community that we are part of, and we just talk like, hey, I want to learn more about your deals, and it's like, oh yeah, we actually need to raise for capex budget that would you be able to help us in. And that's how we learn. We help with the raising capital. As you know that Mercy and I live in California. I mean, the deal over here for multifamily, it doesn't make any sense. And I mean, even 2 years ago, it still doesn't make sense. Even now, it's even worse. So, but we know that we have a capital here, Silicon Valley, a lot of it's the capital states. So that kind of bringing our aha moment for us, like, hey, maybe we cannot find a deal over here, but we do have a capital that we can help. And that's how we got started into the 348 units in there.
How many units?
348.
Your first deal was 348 units.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, we are, I mean, looking back our journey right now, I can tell you that we have a lot of downsizing in our units acquisition now. I mean,
yeah, no, but I'm impressed by that. The first building I bought was 18 units, right?
Yeah.
The first building I bought was 18. So, the other, and I want the listeners to really get that, right? So correct me if I'm wrong, right? You're in a market where it's hard to deploy your own capital because there just aren't so many deals, right? You were networking. You found somebody that wasn't selling a deal, but you found somebody who was looking for money for a deal, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. And so you got involved with that deal, and that deal was probably bigger than anything you could have taken down on your own. I'm just assuming, right? I mean,
for sure. Yep. For sure.
So I really want the listeners to understand that, right? You guys weren't limited by your geography. You weren't limited by the amount of capital you had, right? You were looking to cooperate, and you got creative, right? You got creative about how you're going to get into this business, and you came in from a totally different angle, right? As opposed to the traditional way. I find a deal, I raise the money, I put some of my own money in, and then I go through the whole process of learning property management and all of that kind of stuff, right? And marketing and everything else. So I just really want the listeners to understand that. You kept your mind open, you were out there, you got into action, you had some resources, right? Your own resources or maybe other people's resources, and you found somebody that was looking for something that you had. So I really want the listeners to understand that, because that's how a lot of deals happen, right? You may not be in a position to drop $100,000 or $250,000 or $1 million in a deal, but there's still a way for you to work your way into that deal, right?
Correct. Can I expand a little bit what you just said, though? Mercy and I have philosophy called 3T. You got a talent, treasure, and time. We do believe that in every single deal, or even in any other area of life, we got the 3T to offer. Number one is treasure, right? I mean, you might have the capital, or you might know someone who have a capital that you can help and augment the team that way. Maybe you network with, given that your area where you are, you may be knowing a high network individual that can help the team. That's something that you can add value to the people. The second one is actually talent. A lot of people don't realize in multifamily, I mean, if you like Excel, you like project management, hey, you can shine in the multifamily business though. How many people never think like your Excel, expertise going to be adding so much value in underwriting, project management, right? I mean, we just going through like a roofing project right now, and that Mercy is actually, she's coming from a restaurant operator, hotel operation. She understands about project management. If you give it to me, I'll be losing hair by now. But she was able to put it all together like, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. This is what we're going to coordinate with the property management, with the roofer, with the bank, all the kind of financing thing like that. She was the one that, handed out personally just because of her project management skill.
That's her talent, right? That's her talent, right?
Exactly. And the last one is actually, you just said, is your time. It's a sweat equity. You might not be, the most knowledgeable people or the wealthiest people in the team, but you do have the time that a lot of people don't never realize they never utilize it. You can do mystery shop. You can call in vendors. You can calling brokers, building a relationship that way. That's how you add value to people, right? I think the key word is that 3T. You need what kind of T that you want to bring and add value to the team than taking down the larger project.
I really like that. When are you guys going to write that book? You should write that book. That's a great book. Seriously. No, and you'd be surprised. You know, I mean, I've never heard that before, but I love it because I believe you. We all have treasure, right? We have an infinite. We you know, we're connected to the infinite intelligence. We have so much treasure that most people don't realize, right? Everybody has some talent, right? You're never going to run into two people that have the same talent, and that's what I was talking about earlier. You know, if you can bring somebody to the table, you know, or if you can bring something to the table that's missing, that somebody's going to go like, oh my God, that's like, I remember years ago, we started a software company. It was called Property Calc, right? And it was a guy that knew how to do Excel, right? And it never really took off because for a number of different reasons, but he was an expert at Excel, right? So we put this whole program together. Now we used it ourselves and we tried to market it as a software, you know, for property managers, and it just didn't take off. But that's not the point. The point is that he had a talent for doing Excel. This guy could get on Excel and just, I mean, he created formulas. It was amazing, right? I mean, it saved me time because what would take me 4 or 5 hours to do, I would just input the data and his whole spreadsheet would do it, right? So I completely believe what you say, that we all have talent, we all have a treasure, right? And time is our most valuable asset. So if you can save somebody time, right? If you can save somebody time, that's huge for them, right? And it's also a way that you can learn while you're, you know, volunteering, for lack of a better term. You're learning along the way and providing value, and I think that's so key because, you know, there's listen. And how do you find those opportunities? You get out there and you network. You know, you put yourself out there, right? And you actually say to people, listen, I've never done a deal before. I mean, not you or me, but there may be some people that say, I've never done a deal before, but this is what I have to offer, right? I'm really good at property management, or I'm really good at Excel. I'm really good at marketing. I'm really good at social media, right? And I have the time. I'm willing to dedicate, you know, however many hours, 6 hours, 8 hours a week to help you with your project. You know, if someone came to me and said that, and I said, well, how much is it going to cost? And they said, nothing. I want to do it for free. I'd be like, yeah, what do I have to lose? Absolutely. You know, so that's being creative and it's thinking outside the box. And I want the people listening to really get that, because a lot of people, listen, there's an old saying, the start is what usually stops people, right? A lot of people never get started and they get stopped at that point because they don't think they have anything to bring to the table. And that's where they get stopped right at the beginning, because they never see themselves with the, like you said, the talent, the time, and the what was the third one?
Treasure.
Treasure, right? The treasure. It's the treasure, the talent, and the time, right? They don't see themselves from that perspective. Therefore, they never get started. They never get into action. So now, what are you doing? Are you still working, or are you full-time in real estate now?
I'm still working. I still have a W-2 job. When we jumped in 2 years ago, I think our plan, I give it 2 more years at the very least before I jump in full-time. Mercy doing this full-time, that's the transition that we talk about when we see it as a real estate, multifamily as a business. Yeah,
so I want to just touch base on that, because I think you bring up a good point. I never recommend anybody that I train or I work with to just stop anything cold turkey, especially if it's producing revenue for you, like a W-2 job, or if it covers your insurance. You know, I mean, I think it's a mistake, and I've seen people do this, where they jump from one ship to the other, and without, you know, taking a year or 2 or 3 to really ramp it up, and then they find themselves in a bad situation. So I didn't know the answer to that question, but I'm glad that is the case. And the other thing I want to point out is, you two, I'm assuming you're married, is that correct? Yeah. Okay. So, you know, but you're a partnership, right? Besides your personal life, right, and your family life, you're in a business partnership. And, you know, I'm a firm believer in partners. You know, none of the 22 deals we did, multifamily, we always had partners. Now, I was usually the general partner, right, and the managing member of the LLC. However, I always had partners, because I think partners, not only do they bring something to the table, some of that treasure and talent that you're talking about, but they also hold you accountable, right? They make sure that you're staying on task. You know what I'm saying? And when you have to report to somebody else, there's a mindset there that keeps you on task. So, I think it's important for people to recognize that. And just like in a marriage, you want to find the right partners, right? So now, do you find partners on your deals? I mean, when you come into a deal, do you go out and you look for a partner, or what's your take on that?
Always though, I mean, just like marriage, right? A lot of people think like, oh, one, we got a partner is going to be married to life, but it's not really true, right? Because like what Mercy said, that it going through like many different stages. I mean, I'm pretty sure that none of us are got, arranged marriage, right? I mean, everybody just
You
like
never
through
know,
like,
Hendra.
but anyway, you're right.
Yeah.
But the thing is like, you're going, but back to the point, you're going through the stages of like acquaintance, friendship, courtship, engaged before you got married too. So, you might not become a permanent partner, but you may be doing deal by deal basis. All our deals has been in a through a partnership, whether it's going to be a GP or could be an LP too. And a lot of people discount it like, oh, I'm only an LP. No, you are investing in multifamily because you are playing an important role too as an equity partner. Never discount that. You're playing an important role because you take your share out of that deal, the deal is not going to close. As simple as that.
Yeah.
A lot of people never realize how important it is. And it's a partnership, right?
Yeah. The other thing that I always liked about my partners is, they brought other assets. So as soon as you get into a relationship with somebody, right, you're now all of a sudden your sphere of influence is increased, right? You have more, they know people, right? And many, several times partners would come, hey, I told my brother-in-law, about this deal, and next time you get a deal, he wants to participate, right? And I was like, yeah, okay. It was 6 months later. 6 months later, we found a similar deal, and I called the guy back and said, hey, we got a deal like this other deal. Does your brother want to participate, or brother-in-law? And he jumped in. So I would have never known the brother-in-law if I didn't have that partner. So anyway, Mercy, I interrupted you. It looked like you were going to say
it's
something.
okay. I think I want to expand a little bit. One of the partner that we have this kind of criteria as well as a partner, which is that always a booth on the ground partner. That is very important. So become the eyes and the leg and hands for any single deal. So in any deals, let's say we have in Kansas, then we have a partners booth on the ground, Dallas, Lexington, every single area.
Yeah. And, I did that. All of my buildings were in Chicago. Actually, that's not true. There were a couple that were outside of Chicago, but most of them were in Chicago. And I always had somebody that lived on-site janitor, right? And I gave them a break. I usually didn't pay them, but I gave them a break in rent. Sometimes they lived for free in a unit that I probably wasn't going to be able to rent for very much anyway. But they were my eyes and ears. I could call them up and they could go check it out. A showing, or somebody in my office could make a showing. They could let the person in, right? They could meet them. Walk-ups, people could walk up and knock on the door, right? If the police had to show up, I told them talk to this person or that person. So they were those boots on the street, on the ground. And I don't recommend that for everybody, and every property doesn't lend itself to that. But the point I'm making is that in essence, that person was a partner, right? And I want to bring up one other thing, and I'm sure we haven't known each other very well, but I'm sure you can appreciate this. When I used to rent my units, I tell the person, I said, listen, this is my building, but it's going to be your home. It's my building, but it's going to be your home. So I said, you're a partner with me, right? I'm looking for people that want to be a partner from that perspective, because I'm going to provide a safe place for you to live. I'm going to provide a clean place for you to live, and a reasonably priced place for you to live. But you have to be the same. You have to be safe, you have to be clean, and you have to be reasonable, right? And people, you could tell, that there's some people that just didn't get that, and I didn't want to rent to them. There are other people that were like, wow, you're different. You're a different type of landlord. Because I believe that. They were actually my partners. Listen, if they didn't pay the rent, how am I going to pay the mortgage, right? So that mindset of them, your tenants are actually your partners, even though not on paper and not legally in the traditional sense of partner. But if they sign a lease with you, they're committing to pay you rent, and you're committing to provide them with a safe, clean place to live. So, though the partnership goes beyond what most people think from a traditional standpoint.
No, I mean that's really true. I mean, during about a couple of months ago, we got a chance to visit our acquisition, and then our property manager want to show us the turn unit that's been renovated. Though, I think one of our proudest moment is becoming a multifamily investor when property managers like, oh yeah, this is a couple that come from California checking out the properties, and the tenant tried to sell us like, this is a great properties that you should consider living here. For me, that was like a proudest moment. It's like, yeah, we did the right things. And when the tenant tried to sell you your own properties, like, oh, this is a great property, I mean, you must be doing something right. And I'm really, really proud of that.
Well, and that's the other thing, when you rent to retail, a friend of mine used to build, Dollar General was his customer. He would go in, he'd buy a property, he'd build a store, and then he would lease it to them, and then they would eventually buy it. It was a great business, but there was no emotional connection to it. It was just cold, hard cash. That's all it was, right? And those little moments, right? I remember there was a blind lady that used to live in my building, right? And this was a building that was built in 1880. This woman was probably 70 years old, and she lived the majority of her life in that building. She was blind, right? I used to go and personally collect the rent from her, and I'd walk in the unit, and she would tell me where she kept her money, right? I would have to go in her wallet and get her money, right? And she trusted me that I wasn't going to take her money. You know what I mean? And that was, I actually looked forward. Her name was Mrs. Johnson, God rest her soul. She passed. I actually looked forward to going to see Mrs. Johnson every day, every month, right? And it made me feel good that she would allow me into her apartment, which I owned the building, but it was her apartment, and she trusted me enough to let me go into her wallet, right? And I miss her, actually. I miss her because she was just a great lady. You know what I mean? My point is, you probably remember those people. That's one of those little lessons you'll remember for the rest of your career, right? When that person, when you're at that property, and they were selling you on your property, and you remember that emotional connection, right? How that made you feel. And in multifamily, that's one of the things I love about multifamily is you are actually providing a home for people. Dollar General will live. It's a cinder block box. They don't care, right? But and the people that you provide housing for, it makes a difference for them. You know what I mean? So that's really great. Now, are you in any other kind of property, or are you strictly in multifamily?
We are strictly in multifamily, even though we diversify a little bit to short-term rental a little bit for Airbnb, but it's again through partnership. We haven't sold yet on the going 50-50 or whatever, but we're just trying to look it up. And then our being a real estate entrepreneur, we are always trying to see and pivot. That's the way we see it.
Yeah, which is smart. Someone told me a long time ago, because I used to be a person that would chase shiny objects. And one of my coaches, a mentor, said, Carl, make $100,000 at your first one. Just make 100,000. Just, and that was kind of a big number at the time. And he said, before you start looking at anything else, just focus on this one thing, right? And make it a success. And in his mind, $100,000 would have been a success. So he said, but the point was, make it a success. Take what you learn from that success and then move into a different area, as opposed to jumping all over the place, which I'm sure some of our listeners, have that syndrome, right? The shiny object syndrome. If you're going to pick multifamily, look at multifamily to decide what you want within multifamily. Does that mean 4 flats? Are you going to do 6 to 8 flats? Are you going to do 50 to 100 units? Figure out what it is that you want within the multifamily, and then create your criterion, right? Like what it is you're going to buy, where you're going to buy it, how much you're going to spend, how much capital you're going to put into it, what's the deferred maintenance, how much vacancy is there, right? What's the rent growth, as Mike talked about earlier. Figure those things out, and then stay on that path and get a few successes under you. And I'm sure you can, appreciate that, because I know I made a lot of mistakes. I'm sure you've made a few too along the way.
Yep, for sure.
Do you remember your biggest mistake? Do you remember that, or I can tell you mine?
Biggest mistake.
Well, the biggest mistake, I think, for me, it just basically, you got to have partners that you can trust, and then being boots on the ground, right? I mean, they're becoming the extension of arms and fit for us. Because many times that we just like, oh yeah, we're just going to jump into the deal and then fall into love with the deals without knowing the value of that partners to begin with. I think you brought it up earlier, Carl, that don't fall in love with the deal. I mean, it's great to fall in love with the deals, but you also need to see it, the value of the ethic of the partner that you're going to be partnering with.
Yeah.
As simple as just like this one here. Let's say you set up a habit or a value, like you're going to get back to people when somebody reach out to you within 24 hours, right? Or at the very least have the decency to get back to people. Now, if this person is already hard to get back, even during the acquisition time, what makes you think that he's going to change for the next 5-7 years or the duration of the deals? That's going to be causing a lot of, a lot of painful moment in your next 5-7 years.
Internally,
right?
yes.
Internally, right? So that kind of thing that, a lot of people that don't realize.
No, that's a very good point though, because we talked about it a moment ago about partnerships are like marriages. It's you're going to spend a lot of time with this person, and you're probably going to spend a lot of time. Unlike a marriage, which is more of a lifelong commitment. You're looking at a commitment probably 3 to 7 years. Somewhere in that range. Depending on on a typical real estate deal. So I think that's very important. Not only your financial criterion, but also your personal criterion, right? I mean, is this person, and again, just as an example, I'm married with children. Maybe it's someone I want a partner that's married with children, so that if I have to say, hey, listen, I've got to take my high school kids to whatever, they're not going to freak out, or they're going to say, oh no, I totally get it, I understand, right? Or like you said, and you want to talk about, the 3 things I always talk about when I'm partnering with somebody on anything is, how do you your communication, your intention, and your expectations, right? Communication, intentions, expectations. And when you lay those out, say, this is how I communicate. Some people communicate on text. Some people don't, right? Believe it or not, I have one guy that still uses faxes. Believe it or not, he still uses faxes. That's how old he is, right? But that's his method of communication. So I understand that. What's my intention in this partnership? Is it aligned with your intention, right? And what's my expectation of you, and what can you expect of me, right? So those 3 things are very important. How do you communicate? What are your intentions? And what are your expectations? And that's a 2-way street. What do I expect from you? And what do you expect from me? If you don't cover that in the beginning, you're just setting yourself up for problems, because we all have different methods of communications. We all have different intentions, and we all have different expectations of each other. So unless you can match those up from the beginning, I don't care how good the deal is or how much money you could potentially earn, you're gonna disconnect somewhere. So I think that's a great little piece of advice that you just gave there. Really understanding those little things, because they can make a difference. Listen, when everything is going well, it's not an issue. But when it hits the fan, right, which it will, that's when it becomes an issue. You got to get a hold of somebody and you can't get a hold of them for 3 or 4 days. That's a problem, right? And so I think that's very good advice. So listen, we're coming to the end. Angel, I did see your chat in there, Angel. Angel agreed with us. She said that it's very gratifying when someone's cleaning up the unit, or they know that you're the owner or your potential buyer. So Angel, thank you for that comment. You guys, listen, it was really great chat with you. Now, where do you live again? You live in Hayward?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah, we used to have a service center in Hayward. So I know that's on the East Bay. It's on the it's just by Fremont, right?
Yes, right above Fremont. Yep.
Yeah. And I remember I used to go over the bridge. I forget which bridge is right there, but there's a bridge.
That's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I'd sit on that bridge for 45 minutes, depending on what time it was, what day it was, right? But anyway, that's awesome. I love the Bay Area. I don't get out there as often as I used to, but if I'm ever, if I get out there anytime soon, I'll definitely look you up, because it's just a great area. And I have tons of friends that live out there. I have great memories. I lived out there for 4 years. It was just a great experience, and it's just a beautiful place to live. So thank you guys so much for giving us that. And I love the 3 T's. You guys should really consider writing a little book or a little manual. I swear to God, it's not as hard as you think, just because that's wonderful. Treasure, talent and time. I mean, that alone was definitely worth its weight in gold with this conversation. So I appreciate that. I made notes about that. So, and by the way, offline, if you ever want to talk about that, I have a friend, she's published 11 books. I mean, you could write a real quick little thing. Just, it could be 3 chapters, just those 3 little chapters. But that's a really great way of looking at it, you know. So I appreciate that. And it was wonderful meeting you. Any final thoughts, or how do people get a hold of you if they want to?
So we always be happy to help people that want to get into multifamily. I mean, we are where we are here because somebody invested their time and knowledge to us to take us where we are today. So happy to connect with people that want to jump into multifamily. They can reach out to Facebook. Hendra Tambunan, it's my name in Facebook. We also have a website, Ideabox Capital, IDEABOX CAPITAL, and then just contact us that way too. So we're always looking forward to connecting with people that want to get into multifamily.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. I really appreciate your valuable time, because I know your time is valuable. And what I took away from this was, you know, the talent, or the treasure of the talent, the time. And I'm going to share that with my teenage kids, because I think that's just a great life lesson. So thank you guys. And if there's anything you could, if there's anything Mike or I can ever do for you, please let us know. You know, let's connect on LinkedIn. I know you did with Mike, and I look forward to hearing more about your success. So
appreciate it, Carl. Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day. Oh yeah.
okay. Yes. Happy Father's Day to everybody. So thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
Carl, and be
Bye-bye,
sure to
guys.
tell Mike thanks too. So, bye,
Okay,
guys.
we'll do. Bye-bye.
All right.
I think we're off. Yeah, there we are.